Good morning, campers. Welcome to Radio Camp Haplet, a Percy Jackson Reelong podcast. I am your host, Zach.
And I'm B.
And this week, we read another amazing chapter of The Lost Hero. This is another Leo chapter. I would make more hot or heat puns, but I think at this point, they're not warranted.
Yeah, I was noticing that where you fall into this trap where it's like, okay, so am I going to make like a pun about fire for Leo and a pun about storms for
Jason?
I can't even remember his name. Jason. I'm like, wait, what is that? I'm turning into Jason. I'm forgetting characters' names. Yeah, for Jason or for like Piper, I guess. I don't even know what you would make a pun about. Beauty, I guess. I don't know. But especially with Leo, I feel like the puns about either ice or fire, they're kind of inevitable. But would Rick Riordan take the lowest hanging fruit and use that to name a chapter? Sometimes, maybe? I don't know.
Well, when it came to me with this chapter title, I almost went with low-hanging fruit with this one, but I didn't. I was like, oh, this is too hard.
Wow, I'm proud of you. Okay, so are you gonna just fess up? What is it?
The name of the chapter for this week is Leo Becomes Master of the Claw Machine.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah, it is kind of a claw machine.
See, the other one that I had to do with the porter potty, but I'm like, do I really want to resort to potty humor?
I mean, Rick might have, is the thing. Sometimes he would have, but like Supreme Lord of the Bathroom already is taken, so I guess. Yeah, Claw Machine's pretty good.
The one that I thought of that was the potty humor is Leo doesn't taste yellow snow or something like along those lines.
I was thinking like Leo does a smashing good job or something like that. Like just so many puns. I don't know if I'm like, I feel like our impulse to impersonate Rick Riordan like becomes more punny than he even is, but like that's what our brain does. I don't know, our collective podcast brain.
I'm imagining either like Rick Riordan's like editor or the person that actually helps him make all those. I'm not sure like if he makes them all or he has a collaborative effort.
I'm not sure. Yeah, that'd be something I'd ask him.
He's just like, write these down because they're all good. And that's the one thing I miss about, like, Heroes of Olympus. He does it later on in other book series where he brings back the funny titles and stuff. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but some of them are actually really funny jabs. And they're great once we ever get to them. So, B, what is the summary of this chapter?
Okay, so first chapter, isn't particularly long, honestly. It kind of, I guess, overlaps with what we've already talked about in Piper's chapter where they've crash landed, and in this case it's from Leo's perspective, so he's sort of picking up the pieces, trying to figure out what's wrong with Festus the dragon. So this is like when their perspectives split off and he goes to check on Festus. Festus looks like he's not broken, but of course the one part that they can't replace is broken, which is his brain, basically the control disc, which is like irreplaceable, and Leo is kind of depressed about it. Anyway, he sort of gets like in his feels about Piper and Jason dating because he feels like a third wheel and that he's like not really cool and he doesn't have like anybody paying attention to him, and he feels like a little bit embarrassed about how he acted towards Ice Princess, whatever her name was, because she gave him the cold shoulder, no pun intended. Then like the evil Earth Lady appears in like the gross primordial porta potty ooze, and he's like, oh, you again, you were there when my mom died, why are you here? And she's just kind of, I guess, like almost like the negative thoughts inside of his brain, because she's like encouraging to like abandon his friends, and that, I don't know, he'll walk lightly upon the earth if he abandons them or something. I don't know, there's a lot of like themes in this book of characters being dissuaded from helping their friends and then being like, no, I'm not going to do that. So he's like, no, I'm going to go help my friends. And he goes, first he throws a toilet seat at her and then she disappears, which I'm kind of surprised that works. And then he hears a noise and he thinks it is Piper's voice. So he thinks Piper and Jason are probably in trouble. So he, out of his bag of tricks, pulls a gigantic hammer and scurries on his way. And that's basically the chapter. So it's kind of just leading up to the next chapter,
It's a very short chapter. Again, we already have this. We've already talked about it, how like the formula has kind of changed a little bit where we have two chapters. One's normally short and the other one's a lot longer. For me,
one's kind of the setup and one's the payoff.
Yeah. That's exactly what it's like. And even like when it comes to this chapter, again, for me, I love when it comes to Leo and his perspectives, because we're so used to everyone's saying that he's like the jokey character, but then when you get to his actual perspectives, he's the exact opposite of like what people perceive of him. And I like that, like what we get here is like, again, we're talking about like this relationship between Festus and Leo, and kind of like how what makes something inherently evil, is it the brain chip or is it the being? Whereas like here it doesn't really matter, because like Leo's really just trying to fix Festus, because it wasn't that the dragon decided to break up, but this mysterious thing happens, B, where there's a flash freeze in the internal components. I wonder how could something get flash frozen so quickly for like magical means?
Yeah, so I'm assuming one of the probably magical ice people they just encountered.
Maybe there was the one person that Jason pissed off. I don't know. That's a possibility.
That's what I was thinking. Probably her. Because he was like trying to be all like hot stuff, which is, it's funny in this chapter you find out that like the reason he looks better when they walk back out is because he tried to like make himself like sort of cleaned up for her, which is hilarious. And he's just like, he combs his hair and like washes off and stuff. And then she's just like, you're gross.
It's funny that like we joke about this, but it's not so different than like Piper's charm speak, with like Keone's kind of like has like this innate ability because she's like a goddess, like she's perceived as like gorgeous and stuff, and like Leo's like like he doesn't know what to do in
like
the situation.
A slovenly loser.
Yeah, like that's kind of like, well, there's a word that I would use, but in this case I don't consider like Leo to be a very like person that donates to streams and doesn't get affection.
Yeah, he's not exactly a Casanova. Also, kind of because of his personality, I think he's always like a little bit kind of gross looking, because he's like always covered in grease and stuff, because he's like fixing up like mechanical parts.
Yeah, and see, if they were to start doing that, where like he's kind of like the Casanova, you fall dangerously into like the stereotype of like the person that's like of Spanish descent or like South American descent that's supposed to be the romancer.
Oh yeah, that's true too. That's like Buzz Lightyear on Spanish mode.
Yeah, Buzz Lightyear in Spanish mode, or like a Don Juan type of person.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that would be kind of weird. I didn't even think of that. But that's true. Yeah, no, but that's like totally not his character at all. He's kind of just like an awkward loser in a lot of ways. That's kind of what the first chapter is all about, is how he feels a little bit like he gets rejected a lot. He's a bit of an incel, not exactly, but like he sounds really sort of self-flagellating in this chapter.
Well, yeah, he does that a lot, especially with like, oh man, Jason and Piper, they started dating and then I can't be friends with them.
And they're gonna start dating again, only for real, and I'm gonna be the third wheel. And then he like speaks out loud about how he like no one sees him as special. And that's when like the Earth Lady appears, like sort of capitalizing on his insecurity. And I'm just like, okay, dude, like how old are you? Like, it's fine. You'll find someone.
He's like 16, 17 at this point. I think he might be 15. It's one of those things where he's still a teenage enge. No, okay. Like, honestly,
no one is cool at that age. Like, no offense if you're that age, but like, I wasn't cool at that age.
No joke. Like, neither of us, I can say, like, self-deprecating myself, I was probably, okay, I was president of the anime club. I loved D&D. I love fantasy novels. I was as far away from being the cool kid as like humanly possible.
You got so close to the intro of I'm Not Okay, I Promise, where it's just like, you like D&D, Audrey Hepburn, you can't swim, you don't know karate. I don't want to make it. I just want to, never mind. If you listen to MCR, you know what I'm talking about. Fangoria too, they list that too. It's like they're describing your personality.
Oh, I mean, I read Fangoria. But
that's what I'm saying.
But here's the funny thing, B. We flip it now, and I would considerably be the cool nerdy kid because I like all these things.
That's true, that those things are cool now because like nerd culture is different. That's kind of interesting, yeah. I mean, I don't even really think that I would consider Leo a nerd. He's just like a bit of like an awkward guy.
I think we're using like the weird broad sense of the word nerd. He technically is a nerd, but he's nerdy at mechanical things, which is a little differently.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. He's just an enthusiast, but yeah, it's that kind of thing. This whole first chapter is really just about him feeling a little bit sorry for himself, to be honest. And he's already kind of bummed out because Festus is like broken down, and the one piece, like the one part that he would never be able to replace is what's broken.
This is like when I'm looking at this quintessentially from like the boy that finds the dragon or the girl that tames the horse type of story, or it's like How to Train Your Dragon. Like there, you can use it in different ways. Like horse girl and car guy are the exact same thing. Just they even have horsepower in their name.
Yeah, it's like you're the one person who can fix it. In this case, it's kind of overlapping because it's kind of a car and a horse in some ways.
No, it's and also dragons, so it's like all these mystical things.
A dragon is sort of just like a horse. Like that's the way they function a lot of the time in stories like this. It's a steed.
If we are to like look at the traditional model of like kind of like I use How to Train Your Dragon, there's always the moment where you have like this symbiotic relationship between creature and human where they have to like work together, whereas you always have the scene where one of them gets hurt and the like I'm the only one that can actually help it, so they're willing to like jump into like a battlefield and like be almost mowed down by bullets to protect the one thing that they really care for. Because quintessentially, if we look at it, Festus is pretty much the good natures of Festus in many ways, where like Leo like sees Festus in this way of like, okay, he's the only thing that understands me because it's mechanical and we're both misunderstood. I have fire powers. He's a dragon. This is starting to sound like a rom-com. But you have like those characteristics which I like in those.
He was a boy, he was a dragon. Can I make it any more obvious?
Oh, exactly. Oh man, that's like the girl that was like married to like a 300-year-old pirate ghost and decided to get a divorce, which actually happened in real life.
That was a roller coaster of a sentence, Zach. I could not process what you were saying.
No, that actually happened. Like, just imagine a ghost being dumped by just this one. We're taking a break.
Wait, but like, how did she get married in the first place?
I mean, there's people on the internet that would do it for like $20. They're like ordained ministers.
Okay, but all right. We'll just get sidetracked if I try to unpack how that makes any sense. But regardless, yeah, like I said, this first chapter, not a whole lot happens really. It's just sort of, I guess it's a little bit more like internal monologue stuff with Leo, and then obviously Earth Lady, whatever she is, appears to him.
Which is more sinister because I think it's funny the way that like Rick Riordan's like emphasizing this, because we're seeing it from like, he couldn't make it more obvious that this person's evil because they're literally coming out of the primordial ooze of like porta potties.
Of a porta potty, yeah. It was like the chemicals and who knows what else. Yeah, gross.
It's gross. It reminds me of like the chocolate river, not in the original Willy Wonka, but the remake that looks just like a sewer system. And it's gross.
Yeah. I think the original looks more like a sewer system because it just looks like dirty water. Like, there's no way that looks like chocolate, right? Like, I love that movie, but if you see Augustus Gloop in that, like, that looks like the most cheap Nesquik you could ever buy. That is not chocolate. In some ways, though, it's less scary to swim in because, like, actual chocolate, swimming in that sounds kind of like, you know, Artax in the Swamp of Sadness or something.
I'm just like imagining some British guy like on his smoke break putting the Nesquik into the chocolate river before they're filming.
Into the water.
Oi, we gotta finish this Nesquik, and it's like kind of like water.
It looks a little bit gross. It's fine. Just go with it. It's fine.
Well, I mean, if we like talk about like Willy Wonka B, it's like, I'm surprised like that factory exists because that's just like a herd of like OSHA violations and so many levels.
Well, that's why he never let anybody in, because he's like, oh, if they see what's going on here with all my like weird abducted people that I brought over.
Oh man, it's like an Upton Sinclair novel.
Yeah, no, it's exactly. It's just not. It's not good. If you want to look into how messed up Willy Wonka is, look up like the original Oompa Loompas. That is problematic. Just on so many levels, I can't even.
Yeah.
And then in the remake, they made it problematic again. Like they made them into like sort of ambiguous, like orange, green-haired creatures in like the movie, like the first movie, and then the second movie, they're like, let's make it one guy, and that was weird. And like they actually like made like talking about the village he came from, it just like made it weird and colonialist again. And it's like, dude, we tried to get rid of this. Anyway.
That's just a Tim Burton problem, because he's like, oh, this is...
Yeah, I think that is a Tim Burton problem. He's like, I just want to use this one guy, this one man who happens to have dwarfism who I'm friends with.
Yeah, no, I like Deep Roy. Deep Roy's an interesting actor.
I mean, he's a good actor.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the way that they framed it made it bad again. I was like, well...
If we go back to like when we talk about like this conversation with this, what I like about this is that, again, I think you brought up a really good point about this, is like when it comes to all these, like one of the major themes as well in the story is kind of like people not abandoning their friends, even though like their friends feel like they're abandoning them, which is a very teenager mentality of like I don't want to use the word paranoia, but you have like this fear in the back of your head that your friends don't want to hang out with you or something the older you get, which is something that happens.
Yeah, it's kind of like they all have these different insecurities about not being able to finish this quest in one way or another, like these sort of secrets. And it's kind of interesting. It's like in a way kind of a metaphor for being a teenager where you think you're the only weird one and everyone else has it all figured out, but actually everyone has their own thing that they're struggling with, which like I think Rick knows that he's doing that. It's pretty obvious that like all of them are, because they're not like communicating, it feels kind of lonely and isolating that whatever, like Leo is secretly dealing with the firepower as well, not for long secretly, and then obviously Piper feels like she's evil because she's gonna betray everyone like Selena Beauregard. And
Yeah.
Piper has that insecurity, and then Jason has the insecurity of not knowing who he is and like feeling like he has some sort of secret past that he can't even remember. So it's like it definitely has this like theme of them feeling like they have their own isolated struggle that they can't really talk about to the others, but ultimately they're more alike than they are different. They're just like not communicating that because they're like, I don't know, ashamed basically. And that's kind of what being a teenager is like.
Yeah, no, I feel like when it comes to like being a teenager, B, it's like you have like these weird secrets that you, because your body's changing in many ways through puberty and stuff that you don't know how to like articulate it. Plus, we as teenagers, I know I didn't have the social tools to actually communicate. Like, I'm having a problem. It's easier just to internalize it and hopefully it doesn't become a brain tumor.
Yeah, no, every kid thinks they're the only one who like it has a bunch of acne or is like going through weird growth spurts or like just feels disgusting in every way.
If you want to hear an example of this, I remember like when I started going through puberty, I started to get really hairy legs, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is like not natural." And I remember just wearing like these baggy pants and stuff, and like being really afraid to like show my legs. But then when I got to like high school, we all had to strip down. Like, oh my god, everyone all has hairy legs, and it was like one of those like secrets and stuff. That was like once you actually see other people have that, it isn't one of those things where it's like you're not ashamed of it as much anymore. But it's one of those things that's like, everyone has like a secret and stuff, especially like when you get like acne or your voice is changing and stuff. Like you're afraid of like things that you liked as a kid. Like, oh, that's all baby stuff. So like you try to hide it sometimes. Whereas some people are very like extroverted and like what they like. And that's kind of like what I see like with here is like with like Piper, Leo, and Jason. I always think of like I can't remember the name of the story, but it's like the one like when they all eventually like find out like, oh, you're harboring a secret. Well, I'm harboring a secret. It's like the person that like cuts her hair to buy her husband like the watch chain, and the husband.
Oh, you mean like Gift of the Magi?
Yeah. Give to them. Like it's all gonna be like that moment where they have like, oh, so we're all not that different.
Like all this time, yeah, exactly. I feel it. That's basically like the theme going on here. Though I mean the whole firepower thing is not long for this world because obviously, this kind of makes sense that ultimately Leo would be forced to use his powers in one way or another. I kind of was leaning more towards he would accidentally use them somehow and like cause some sort of destruction and then have to admit them. But instead it's like kind of like a nice positive spin, which we'll get to in the next chapter, where he actually uses it for good and then Piper and Jason react positively to it, which is not exactly what I was expecting.
Well, they're the ones that are acting positive to it. Wait until like Leo goes back to camp and all the people that have all their biases.
That's true. Well, that's true. There's a lot to unpack there, but I guess that brings us to chapter 24, which is the second chapter. All right, I'm going to try my best to sum up this chapter quickly. There's way more that happens in this one. So he heads back into, I guess, the factory, the warehouse, whatever. He hears Piper's voice. He doesn't feel too great about it. We know already that that's the Cyclops imitating her voice. That's what Cyclopses can do. But he has a sixth sense that there's something up. This reminds me, I'll kind of get to it, but this reminds me a lot of that scene in The Hobbit with the trolls. It's like almost exactly the same.
Oh, you mean out of the frying pan, I think the chapter's called?
Yeah, it's like so similar. It's kind of it can't be a coincidence. So he sees a group of Cyclopses and Piper and Jason are hanging upside down in some chains over a fire which they light, which obviously they're gonna cook them. So like yeah, the reminiscence of The Hobbit is strong. There's three of them, which we eventually find out is Ma Gasket and then Sump and Torque, which are like, I guess they're just I don't know, car puns. I don't.
My other joke that I was gonna make was Leo blows a gasket was gonna be the other title.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah, I like that actually. Anyway, he overhears Piper trying to use her charm of speak to like trick the Cyclopses. They're not having it because Ma Gasket is smart enough to know I know you're the daughter of Aphrodite and that's what you're trying to do.
Oh, she doesn't say that, B. She doesn't say Aphrodite. She says Venus.
Venus, that's true. She does say Venus. So she references Roman gods, which we'll get into. She sends Torque off to get salsa, which I think is hilarious. So they're going to eat demigods with salsa. So Piper like locks eyes with Leo and knows that he's up to something, but that he has to be very quiet. They don't notice that he's there. Surprisingly, he's good at sneaking around. The Cyclopses get all braggadocious and start bragging about how they're the best Cyclopses ever. They kind of like differentiate between the different kinds of Cyclopses. Like some help demigods like make weapons. Some of them are good. Some of them are bad. I don't know. There's like different kinds, but they're the ones from the north who don't listen to the gods. They don't care. And they, I guess, invented this car company that like builds weapons and SUVs. All the while, Leo comes up with a sneaky little Violet Baudelaire-esque kind of solution, which is he uses his sort of like tinkering powers to like remote control like a bunch of like robotic arms that he's like secretly like rigging up to attack these Cyclopses, all while trying not to get noticed. And then luckily Piper is like pretty good at distracting them so they don't like get murdered in the meantime. And lo and behold, he uses these giant claws, I guess, to take out the two sun Cyclopses. But Ma Gasket, she like is, you know, a little bit more savvy than her sons, and like for the most part, like counters his advances and like breaks apart the robot arms. But then he's like, "Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll drop this giant what is it, an engine block on top of her," but he has to like sort of trick her to come forward, and she tries to like set him on fire, and then this is when Piper's like, "Oh no, he's gonna die," and then he doesn't die. He's like, "Wait a second, you should be incinerated," and then he uses his fire powers for the first time in front of the gang and does like a sort of concentrated beam to the weakened link of the chain that is holding the engine block, which I guess this is another power he has. He can notice like
you can shoot lightning like Azula.
When metal is weak, I guess that's like another sixth sense he has. So he shoots his fire beam and it breaks and it crushes. And then the end of the chapter, they notice that the Cyclopses are reforming, and then that's kind of a callback to the thing about Tartarus and how the monsters are emerging from the earth and they're not going back to where they came from. So they're basically immediately respawning as soon as they die. Oh, also Piper is like, "That's awesome, you have fire powers," and doesn't seem too annoyed about the whole situation, but maybe she'll change her tune later on. That's basically what happens. I tried my best to shorten it as much as I can.
No, you're good. You're good. That's actually really, really perfect. Like, what I like about this chapter is that, again, I've already talked about it. I always get teary-eyed when I think about it, but I love when you have characters that are so, like, they're good at one particular thing, and that one particular thing is what saves the day. Like, we see this with, like, Tyson and Sea of Monsters with, like, being impervious to fire and making sure that everyone doesn't explode. And we see this here with, like, Leo's trying to use his powers for good and trying to, like, break that stereotype from, like, 1666 with, like, the Great London Fire. And that he's also using like his, I guess, mechanical smarts to like smart the beasts, because
I feel like, I mean, we've already seen him be pretty helpful just in terms of like getting Festus fixed up, but it's kind of nice that he gets like this sort of like moment in the sun where he uses his fire powers, his like mechanical smarts to like really save the day, because Jason and Piper are like totally incapacitated. They don't help him at all. And it kind of like really contrasts, you know, just the last chapter where he feels like he's not helpful. He's a third wheel. You know, here he's a hero, basically.
And if we juxtapose this to like Percy Jackson, normally it's Percy Jackson saving everybody. We never really have those very rare moments. I guess like when Percy turns into a guinea pig and it's like Annabeth saving him. But we never have like the moments where like you see these characters like really shining in many ways. Like I can probably pull more examples, like Bianca saving everybody by sacrificing herself, or even like Beckendorf sacrificing themselves. But here's the word: they're all sacrificing themselves to help Percy Jackson's advantage, rather than them all working together and using their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, so I thought that this was kind of a satisfying chapter right after we kind of like peer into Leo's psyche, and he's like getting really down on himself and feels like he, you know, he has like the third wheel element where he feels like he like isn't appreciated, but also he just feels like he's not very helpful, I think.
B, what you're telling me is that he feels like he's the weakest link in the chain.
Oh god. Yeah, in some ways, yeah. And I think, I don't know, that's kind of like a common thing that happens in like a trio in like a YA book, where it's like there's always one who feels like left out in some way, especially
Ron
if two
Weasley.
of them are like love interest. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, though actually then it ends up being that he's the love interest of Hermione, but that's another story. But yeah, I kind of was satisfied by that, because obviously he was trying to be dissuaded from helping them from the Earth Lady or whatever, and he doesn't take that to heart, and he decides, no, I'm gonna go and try and save them, and then ultimately proves himself. And you know, the thing he was most fearful of is like admitting that he has these fire powers, because like not the greatest rap as far as like people who have had these have caused like, you know, the Great London Fire, and it's like usually like death and destruction. It's like kind of a difficult power to control, but it's like really nice to have this moment where he like uses it to save them, and then Piper immediately is pretty accepting, which I like. I mean, Jason's a little bit out of it, so like he's pretty glad too, but he's just like, you know, drinking nectar, like, good job, bro. Like, I don't know, we'll get to him later, but Piper seems pretty thrilled about the whole situation.
If we look at like the characteristics of fire, it's a very destructive force, but at the same time as it being destructive, it does a lot of wonderful things, like gives people heat. You can cook your food. There's many applications of it. Yeah, because like we have like, you know, don't play with fire because you're gonna get burned, because fire is like this uncontrollable nature. To the most part, I think when people kind of forget is that you can use fire responsibly. Like there's many ways, like when you make like a cook fire, you go camping, you're supposed to do certain things to make sure it doesn't burn.
Right. I think that that's kind of the gist, the crux of what his powers are like, is that he could use it for good, he could use it for bad. It's difficult to control. I imagine that there's going to be a scene where he maybe loses control of his powers.
And it's going to be the moment, it's going to be the Uncle Ben moment, you know, great power comes great responsibility, in those ways of like, you have all these powers.
I mean, I keep thinking of the scene in Avatar when he's trying to learn firebending, and he's trying to like keep the leaf like burning, like control, and then he's like, oh, he gets like carried away
and
with
then
the
he
fire,
burns
and
Katara.
then he like sets everything on fire. So yeah, exactly. So there, obviously, bad things can happen.
Yeah, like I also love like when it comes to this, I always love when again, what makes a good fight scene is actually, I consider this a really good, well-written fight scene, because there's like this spatial awareness, but also at the most important time, Leo's using the things in his environment to help him with actually getting rid of these creatures, which for me, I like when there's like that spatial awareness. For me, this was a really well-written fight scene. Was I getting bored of it? Not really. I think it went on just a little too long, but I think it adds like that comedic effect, especially when the one Cyclops explodes and they explain like, oh, like the salsa goes everywhere, like it's like this piñata of sauciness, and I love that. Though we do get a very interesting thing that they kind of talk about. They talk about how like they're like, oh, we've been eating people all this time. This one person we had was the son of Mercury.
Right. Yes, I forgot to mention that. So yes, they mention a Roman god when they're talking about Piper. Then they mention this other kid who was speaking Latin, had a purple shirt, and you're like, wait a second. Gosh darn it, there's another camp somewhere, probably. Didn't I just talk about this?
Yeah, you did.
I feel like I guessed that. I was like, is there another camp somewhere where the Roman, like, demigods go? I guess so, and they wear purple shirts. Or maybe they're talking about just Jason, but they ate that person, so, like, I feel like they all are coming from the same place, right? You can't confirm to me, obviously.
Well, I can confirm nor deny it. All I can say is that all the clues that they had right here were that the person was a son of Mercury, and he also made those jokes like, oh, I'm on medication, but he tasted fine. But like he speaks Latin, and we find Jason in a purple shirt.
He had a purple shirt. It's the same. I mean, Anybody can be wearing a purple shirt, but it's they very specifically zero in on that detail. So I'm thinking there's some sort of other camp somewhere we haven't been told about, which is kind of fascinating to me. The idea that there's like another Camp Half-Blood. Is it also called Camp Half-Blood? I don't know.
I mean, wouldn't it be like the Roman equivalent? It wouldn't be Camp Half-Blood. It would be something like Roman.
But I mean, Half-Blood I don't think is specifically Greek. But yeah, they're all like demigods, I guess. Are they called something different?
Who knows? We'll see. Maybe they might have the same name, or maybe it's like a very like Roman name, like Camp Sena Centaurus or something. I don't know.
I feel like that'd be like hecka pretentious as compared to Camp Half-Blood. It's like, all right, we get it.
But B, weren't the Romans pretentious?
Yeah, I guess that's true. That's true. That's true.
Also, Jason has the tattoo of Squar, which literally means like the people.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this is kind of interesting. We're due for a Jason chapter next chapter, so I imagine they might get into that. Again, it's like kind of frustrating because we get these like drips and drabs of information, and then like what are they gonna do? Ask Jason? He doesn't remember anything. So they'll be like, "Do you remember a camp where you wear a purple shirt?" And he'd be like, I hardly know my name." So
Wait, B, we're gonna do a reenactment right now. Ask me a question. I'll be Jason.
So, the thing with the purple shirt, I know you were like half passed out to begin with, and also you don't remember who you are, but do you remember like a camp where everyone spoke Latin and wore purple shirts?
I don't remember. It's just part of my last life or something. Maybe it's possible, but I don't remember because my brain don't work real well.
Yeah, like it's so frustrating because we like get this new information and there's no way to corroborate it or find anything more about it. It's just sort of like we get hints from the outside world, but Jason is just kind of like not helpful until he is, right? Until he like has this random like sort of, you know, ratatouille brain blast moment where he briefly remembers something.
It's not even it's like a Jimmy Neutron blame blast.
Yeah, that I know. I was just thinking of like Anton Ego when he like eats the ratatouille and his like eyeball it like zooms back to when he was a little French boy in the countryside.
No joke, B, that's actually one of my favorite scenes ever because that's exactly how you set up a backstory in like 2 seconds flat. And I love oh man, can I gush about
but
that?
I do feel like we have like moments like that with Jason where like briefly, right? Like he remembers Talia. He doesn't know how he remembers her, but he has like this inkling that's like that's my sister. He remembers his name all of a sudden. He has the hint from like the weird she-wolf in the dream he had. So like there's some moments where he remembers things, but it's like it feels very specific, like he's being allowed to remember things as things happen, which I don't know exactly how that works. Like it's a very specific type of memory loss that he has.
Now, B, I have some food for thought for you. Like, would it work better if like throughout some of these chapters we get like flashbacks, kind of like blurry like images or something, like training montage, Jason as a kid or something? Or does it work better that we have like these weird glimpses?
I don't think we need that. Also, like that's not the perspective of the book, right? It's coming from the discrete perspectives of each of these characters, and then like he does have, I guess, dream sequences or whatever, but it's I don't know. I don't think like a direct flashback would be necessary, at least like not as a narrative choice to keep doing that, like have him remember who he was, because the whole point is that he can't. And like we do have very brief moments where, like I said, like he remembers the thing about Talia, he remembers like certain like ancient Roman things, right? Like there'll be a moment where they're talking about something and he'll remember the Roman name of a god, he'll remember like a certain thing of how that mythology works, and he doesn't like remember how he remembers, sort of, which is like weird. But I like the way that works, that it's just sort of like it's inherently in there, but he kind of like can't contextualize it all.
I think it's a lot like pure instinct, B, where it's like fight or flight. It's like there's some things that you can do just like in your reptile brain. That
it's like
just,
muscle memory that he has of these certain things, but it's not like he could really articulate why he knows them. I think that like works pretty well. I think in the next chapter there's probably going to be some interrogating of like what's going on with him. But first, obviously, they need to hightail it out of there because the Cyclopses are reforming.
I just thought something really dumb, B, because it's been a while since I've read this book. They talk about specifically that Jason got hit on the head and he has this bruise. Do you think it's gonna unclog his memory?
Oh yeah, you're right. That's really funny. I mean, like if we were using cartoon logic, then yeah, like you have amnesia, then one bump on the head. It's like that line in Oh God. In National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, where cousin Eddie is just like, darndest thing, get what is it? Fall down a well, as go cross, gets kicked by a mule, as go back to normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
exactly like that.
is that
Oh,
what's
man.
gonna happen to him, where it's like memory gets erased by a god,
Hard reset?
and then
Oh, no.
he gets kicked in the head by a cyclops and he remembers who he is? Like, I don't know.
Oh, no, B, like, hard reset is just the gigantic hammer that Leo has. Hit me in the head one time. Let's see if it works.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. He just like he hits him and he just like it is sort of like Spanish language Buzz Lightyear, where you just like keep hitting him and he starts like speaking different language and stuff. Oh, this one's Latin. Like there's different channels or something. I don't know. That would be kind of hilarious if the bump on his head somehow like emerged some sort of information. I don't know if that's gonna happen.
Well, I mean, it makes sense if you look at a story like the Iron Giant. The bump on his head is what gives him humanity.
Is what made him good. Which, yeah, I forgot about that.
And when the dent comes out, he's evil.
That's actually way more comparable to Festus, now that I think about it, right? Because Festus is, like, good, but only on thin ice. Like, he might all of a sudden turn into a murder dragon.
Literally on thin ice. Literally on thin ice, B.
Yeah, oh, that's true. Jeez, I keep making puns accidentally.
But it's interesting that we like talk about this stuff, because a lot of this book focuses, I think, on identity. Like I think that's actually kind of like, thinking of it now, I think that's like the main thesis of this entire book, is the idea of who you are and where you fit in life. Like that's like the teenager mentality, isn't it? Like when you're like 16, like I have no idea what I do. Like I'm 25 and I still kind of have a grasp on what I want to do, but you know, it's still, you have to figure out who you are by yourself. There's not going to be like this godly force that's going to come down and tell you what's right and what's wrong. I mean, yes, technically, yeah, but in this book series there is, but not in real life, which I find that to be so interesting, especially with like Jason, Leo, and Piper, how they all have like these moments of weakness. If I have to use Star Wars, it's like the temptation of going towards the dark side, because, you know, you can get these awesome powers and stuff, but at the same time you lose your humanity while doing it, because you give into these certain emotions which just lead to suffering. But what do we see here? We see moments of like humanity glimpsing through, with like Piper's like, I'm going to lead them, but at the same time, I'm going to figure out a way to save my dad. We see Leo basically being like, I'm going to go save my friends. Take that. I'm going to yeet this toilet seat at you. And then like run towards the factory. And then we get to Jason, which we don't know. When it comes to Jason, he's just inherently willing to help his friends out, because he still worries about everyone. Even if he has lost his memory, doesn't know who he is, he still has like this innate goodness to him, which for me, I love when you have characters that are kind of like, I don't know, like the morality scale of just like either neutral or like really, really helpful, which for me, I like when it comes to this.
Yeah, no, I think all of them have that thing in common, where they want to help their friends, though it's super complicated with Piper, because obviously she feels like she needs to betray them in some way, but we'll see if she ends up doing that, because like, I don't know, she seems to be resisting that in one way or another.
I think Piper's a little different, because she's being strong-armed in a way of like, if you don't help us, we'll kill your dad.
Right, yeah, I mean, she's being blackmailed basically, or like sort of manipulated, because they're like threatening her dad, so it's a complicated situation. Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens next chapter. I don't really... Do you have anything else to say about these two chapters? I mean, we kind of like...
I do have one small thing. What do you think about the monsters coming back now? I feel like that might be a problem.
Oh, right, yeah. So this is horrible, right? Because like that's the one thing we could count on in this series, is that, oh, you could kill a monster and then they like, you know, burst into dust, and like, yeah, they might reform, and like it might take a little while, it might take a long time, but for now you're safe. But these are like immediately reforming monsters, which like kind of completely restructures the way that like fight scenes work, because it's like these respawning bosses basically, where like there's no way to defeat them. I don't really know how that's going to like change the combat in this story, or like, I mean, it's weird because we haven't had a ton of combat, so I guess... Do you think that was like maybe intentional on Rick's part, because that way we wouldn't find out too soon that the monsters are reforming? Because if they had already fought monsters, then they would have like seen it happen sooner. So I guess, I don't know, maybe it was like timed in a specific way where it's like, oh no, he was right. It had to be after they met Boreas and heard all that stuff about Tartarus.
You know what? I had never thought of it that way, B. I think you might actually be onto something. I think, oh man, that's That's a big brain move. Oh my god. I never thought of that.
Right? Because otherwise they would find it out. I mean, unless it wasn't a monster they were fighting, but like...
Well, no, okay, wait. B, if we break it down, think of all the monsters they fought. They fought the Venti, which are storm spirits. They don't technically burst into dust. That's the one thing.
Right. Also, some of them escape,
Yeah.
too, so they don't fight all of them.
So we have moments where, like, you don't know if that's a characteristic of the creature they're fighting, and then the next fight scene we get technically is the Cyclops fight. So yeah, you're right about that. Actually, that is so smart.
There's like no opportunity for them to find that out, and it's timed in such a way that they had just talked to Boreas about the whole thing happening with the monsters not going back to Tartarus. So it like kind of narratively makes sense to like not have a big fight scene until right now.
This goes back to the obvious thing that Rick Riordan is obviously like an architect. He's an outliner. Where like he's planning this stuff out.
Yeah, he must have thought of that because he's like, oh yeah, well we can't have a fight because then they would know too soon and they wouldn't have Boreas explaining why that was happening.
Well, and then it would add this weird thing where it's like, well, we can't fight the monsters, so like you don't have like that tension. Like, oh, we could fight them, but you have this moment where you have like this big boss fight where you see these quintessential like Cyclopses, which to us the Cyclops is like the main type of villain, I guess. Like we're so used to having the Cyclops.
Yeah, this is kind of it's kind of a frustrating thing too, because like Leo finally gets his big moment where he fights like these three Cyclopses off, and then they immediately start to like reform again. He's like, ah, crap.
Now here's the scary thing: are we going to be getting the greatest hits of all the monsters coming back, like Medusa, the Minotaur?
Oh, gee, I know, right? Like, it's like every single monster that we met, like, it's instead of them, like, being cast into Tartarus for thousands of years, they're gonna, like, immediately come back. I don't know. Does that mean that the Medusa head that they have in a box somewhere is gonna, like, turn into Medusa? I don't even know.
Oh, no, is it going to be like the Rita Repulsa moment? After 10,000 years, I'm finally back!
I'm free!
Time to conquer Earth!
Oh my god.
Oh, oh no.
Do you? I follow this Twitch streamer who does a really good Rita Repulsa impersonation where she like emerges out of a garbage can is like, after 10,000 years I'm free.
I've never seen. I gotta send me that. That's great.
It's so funny.
Oh man, like I love Rita Repulsa, and also like the person that plays her. I think her name's Carla Perez. She's also super nice. I've met her at a couple conventions.
I feel like I intentionally forgot a lot of the stuff that happened in Power Rangers.
I mean, you're supposed to, like, it's like Power Rangers is special because like it's like stock footage with like new footage. It's okay to forget that stuff.
No, exactly. They just take a show that already exists and they just like dump new stuff over and they're like, it's another show.
Like that's like my friend Chris and a lot of my friends that do like Gargantucast. They love like all those like, you know, Power Rangers, and I'm gonna say I might be butchering this, or tokusatsu. That's what they're called pretty much, and they're like great. Like I've never actually sat down and watched all of Power Rangers, but I feel like
I don't know if it would hold up. Honest, I was obsessed with it.
I would poop my Power Ranger underwear if I saw it right now.
I legitimately owned Power Rangers underwear when I was a kid. I thought it was like the coolest kid ever. I had that. I had Ninja Turtles boxers. Or actually there were swim trunks. I had Ninja Turtles swim trunks. Anyway, if there was any question as to whether or not I was trans, that was maybe the indicator. And the fact that I named my turtle Donatello, but you know, we've all heard the sad story of Donatello and what happened to him. R.I.P. in peace. Pour one out for my man.
Yeah, pour some pizza out. Oh man, but what we were talking about?
I don't even know what we were talking. We were talking about about the monsters reforming. And
Exactly. So I'm interested to see what's going to be happening with that, because this completely changes the fight dynamic of this whole series. Because
completely,
we are so used to like Percy Jackson fixing all his problems with the swing of his sword. Now that they reform, that's going to be a big problem, especially with like the problems that we have.
I mean, thus far, we haven't really been functioning that way, though, anyway. There's been a lot of, like, the charm speak from Piper, a lot of just, like, sort of diplomacy or, like, sneaking their way out of certain situations. So I think there's definitely ways to, like, avoid, like, endless combat that's useless anyway because they reform. I do think it's like a very convenient narrative thing where the monsters used to just like burst into dust and then you knew that they were gone. Like it's not like in like an action story or something where you like think that someone's dead but they're not really, or you don't know, because like if they're mortal or human or whatever, there's like no real way to tell unless you like get up close and like I check their vitals, I guess. But with monsters they kind of have that like satisfying flourish of like, oh, they're dust now, so you know they're gone. But in this case that's not true anymore.
See, like when it comes to these monsters now, I consider them more like slasher movie villains where like you kill them and then like the person's like relaxed and all of a sudden they get right back up and start to murder you again. Like there's that type of like fearfulness now, especially with like these types of creatures where like we're so used to the idea of like I think it's like the equivalent of like you have like a pencil or something and you throw it to the ground. You know gravity is going to be there to drop it, but then all of a sudden the pencil just is in stasis after you drop it. That is more scarier now than ever, especially with like all the creatures that Percy Jackson has murdered and all the other heroes have murdered suddenly having the ability to come back.
Yeah, I guess that means they're coming back too, because that's like a lot of monsters to deal with. I'm not thrilled about that, especially because like I don't think that these guys are super equipped to do that. They haven't really been in combat much at all.
And that's one of the reasons why I like this series a little more. I think we're dealing more with like different issues, so they have to deal with like fight scenes and stuff differently because as a teenager you can't deal with something physically sometimes. Like a lot of the stuff can be like internalized or like drama based off of like what you think about yourself and like kind of like your self-esteem. So I think it's almost like a reflection. Oh man, I'm about to be like really philosophical. It's almost like a reflection of like the teenage experience where like you can't solve all your problems from running away. You have to solve your problems sometimes through internalization and stuff. Much like these monsters, they're just an obstacle for these people to like get to California now, and they can't really kill them. For me, I like that. That's so cool, actually. Oh my god, this is awesome.
Yeah, we'll see, I guess. I don't know. I'm kind of interested to see how this like function works like with the monsters reforming. Like it seems pretty instantaneous, which like I don't know when the like switch flipped where like all of a sudden all the monsters reform, but it's really going to like kind of change how they interact probably. Again, we've already talked about how there isn't like a ton of combat anyway, so I guess maybe they're just going to avoid it. Boreas kind of like put the, the bad juju on them saying that they were going to encounter a lot of like crap on their way to Chicago. So I mean, they're whatever 3/4 of the way there. So hopefully they don't get too much before they get to Chicago. And then this is where they're gonna encounter the Venti, and then I guess they can't die. So like I don't even know.
Yep, and I am so excited to see all of our fan favorites like the Minotaur, Medusa.
Oh geez, that would be. I don't need the greatest hits of the monsters. We already dealt with you. Go home.
No, I see them like almost like we should just have like the cover bands. Almost not the greatest hits. Like the greatest hits should be from cover bands, or maybe like the
like
Roman
Kids
equivalent.
Bop.
Yeah, maybe like exactly. B. It's like the Roman equivalent, like the Kids Bop of all the monsters.
Oh yeah, the Roman. Would they be different? I don't know. How does that work?
Well, I mean, some of the if the Greek gods are different, I'm sure like when it comes to like monsters and stuff, they're probably different too.
Yeah, again, don't know a lot about mythology, so yeah, just scream out your headphones because I know I'm dumb. I get it. I just don't. I don't know. Sure, is the Minotaur different in Roman mythology? What does that mean? I don't know.
Weirdly enough, I've been doing a lot of research on like Roman society and Roman myths. So we'll see, because I can't find any conclusions. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there screaming and yelling at their podcast machines, which is okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to like at a certain point I have to have the excuse of like I'm supposed to be kind of ignorant on the show, but like should I look up some mythology? It's hard to say.
Well, I think that's kind of the thing is like we go back to like infotainment. You're not supposed to, because Rick Riordan's supposed to give you like the bare minimum.
Right, he's supposed to teach me. I'm the gauge. If he's doing his job right, then I should be learning mythology from him. By the way, actually, I've been watching a show where they reference Ariadne and the string and the labyrinth and everything.
Oh, are you talking about Dark?
Yes, Dark. I'm talking about Dark.
Of course, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I was watching it and I was like, I know this from Percy Jackson, which is kind of embarrassing that I know this mythology simply because I read a children's book. But you know what? If it works, it works. So, shout out to Rick for doing his job.
I think that should be the pull quote for like another Rick Riordan book, is just what you just said right there. It works.
It works. I mean, are you a little bit embarrassed that you learned it from a YA novel? Maybe so. But like, especially if you're 26, maybe so. But like, hey, they do kind of spell it out for you anyway in the show, but I was like, I know that. Like that Leo DiCaprio meme where he's pointing? Like, that's how I felt.
See, that's like with me and like watching, like I've been having so much fun watching Horrible History, because it's on Hulu now. So I've just been like learning a bunch of like awful things about history. Like, wow, that's so miserable. But I love it because it's supposed to be a kid's show, but I love it. Oh man, V, I have to send you some clips from that show because it's like the funniest sketch comedy show about how horrible history can be at times. It's actually kind of funny. Oh man. Well, on that note, B, what do you think is going to be happening next chapter?
Oh, geez. I mean, we kind of hinted at it. I don't know. Like, I think it's weird because we've been doing this sort of like thing with the different narrative perspectives where there is like overlap, so it's not like we're still moving forward in time. So I think there's going to be a little bit of Jason's perspective with what happens with the Cyclopses, but then he's going to sort of like, it's also interesting too because like Jason is like kind of like half passed out, so I imagine there's going to be some sort of like magical mythical, like, I don't know, flashbacks or dream sequence kind of stuff happening. And then, I don't know, maybe they're going to start to ask him about the thing with the purple shirts and the maybe there's a Roman camp somewhere. But, like, again, I don't know if he's going to be super helpful about that. And obviously then they need to, like, you know, get the frick out of there because the Cyclopses are going to reform and they're not really equipped to fight them a second time. So, I don't know. That's kind of my general guess as to what's going to happen. It's weird because, like, to guess what's going to happen is like, well, duh, we already know what happens because there's like an overlap in narrative where we've already seen what happens with the Cyclopses. So they kill the Cyclopses, but then they come back. But this time it's from Jason's perspective where he's hanging upside down by chains.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what's going to be happening, especially with like, are they going to fix Festus? Is it going to be they have to fly the way there?
Right, Festus too, obviously, because they still need to get to Chicago, and like, yeah, they're like 3/4 of the way there. Still, they're in Detroit though. It like that's a long way to walk, even if it's like, you know, technically closer than Canada. But you know,
yeah, they're gonna come back, and Festus is gonna be just stripped for parts. It's gonna be awful.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If you did leave him in Detroit, that probably would.
Oh no.
Just like up on blocks.
Yeah, exactly. They're gonna like, they took my dragon. No. Not to throw shade at people that live in Detroit. I'm sure it's a
I know people
nice place.
If you live in Detroit, they're probably like, I'm offended, but also that points were made.
Yeah, I don't mean it with malice. I know a lot of people that live in Michigan, and they say I won't even drive to Detroit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll see what's going to be happening. So B, where can they find you on the old social medias?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at bkellygorman, and you can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com.
And if you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at Suda41, that's SUDA41. If you want to follow our show on Twitter, that's at halfblood_radio. We actually are going to be doing our next mailbag episode very, very soon. We actually have a brand new number that you can call. So you can leave like a voicemail, and we're going to either play it on the show or read the transcript. But most likely we'll just play it on the show, so please keep it PG, no swear words or anything, because then we'll have to mute them. Bleep them and all that stuff. So the number is 714-468-5412. Again, that number is 714-468-5412. So just call that number up, leave a voicemail. We'll play them at the end of the episode. We'll answer them. They're going to be a lot of fun, so check those out. We also have a Patreon.com/Radio Camp Half-Blood. We also have t-shirts available at TeePublic, so go to www.teepublic.com, and that's pretty much where you can find all this stuff. It's awesome. Well, I'm Zach.
I'm B.
And let's keep staying immortal, everybody. See ya.
Bye, guys.